So, the last two sentences, I will look at the last two sentences. May I scatter freely the immeasurable love, compassion, joy, and equanimity of the awakened mind. So, love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So, they are the four Brahma Viharas. And let's remember for now the word immeasurable. Okay, now we can stop sharing. And then I will share a document. Do you see this? Yes. So, Metta, the topic today is Metta. And it is one of the four, what is known in Pali as Brahma Vihara. It consists of two terms, Brahma and Vihara. Vihara means dwelling. In a literal sense, it means like dwelling with Brahma. But the Buddhist, when the Buddha introduced this teaching, he gave it a new meaning. And so in the Buddhist sense, it translates to, you can say, four divine abodes, four divine abidings. What else can we think of? And then the word immeasurables, they are also called immeasurables because when you cultivate them, you can cultivate them without any measure, and towards every direction, any being, any living being, any creature, without any limitations. That's why they are called immeasurables. And the Pali word is appamana. Metta, it comes from a word called mitta, which means friend. This is very important because spiritual friendship is very important in meditation practice and also in Buddhism. You have the word sangha, right, which is community. The Buddha encouraged people to cultivate and associate with good friends. In cases that you are not able to do so, we are encouraged to be on our own, to practice on our own, because associating with bad friends lead to doing a lot of harm than good. So the four divine abodes, four divine abidings. The first one is called Metta. Different people translate differently. Benevolence, loving kindness. Some people use this loving kindness word like this, or you can also say loving friendliness. Basically, it means looking at yourself or ourselves. It's not just others, and others as if we would look at a friend, a good friend, a spiritual friend, with a sense of friendliness, benevolence, and kindness. So that's what it means, metta. And karuna is compassion. This is clear. Mudita, appreciative joy. Some people translate it as sympathetic joy. So compassion is when other people are going through tough times. Our heart is beating for them and we want to do something good for them, right? When they are going through sufferings. And mudita, appreciative joy, is being genuinely happy when other people are going through good times in their lives, when they are succeeding, when they are progressing in their lives, when they are doing well, being genuinely happy. And when we are not happy, that I think that seems to come from a place of discontent, and that has something to do with us when we are discontent with our lives or our spiritual lives, or with our community. The Pali word is arati. We tend not to be appreciated of things in our lives and other people's happiness. Upekkha is equanimity or equipoise. In later Buddhist text, it's also defined as in between. For example, there are 8 worldly conditions like gain and loss, fame and defame. In the midst of all ups and downs, like your mind is so balanced and sustained. You could also explain it, interpret as strength of mind. Strength of mind. It's not what apathy. It's not indifference. It's, you can also explain this as impartiality, looking at everybody equally without prejudice. Perfect. So that's what it is. And metta. So of these 4, we are going to look at metta, loving kindness, and it is an antidote. Loving kindness is an antidote to hatred. So hatred, dosa. Okay, dosa is one of the 3 poisons. There are 3 poisons in Buddhism. Poisons in the sense that they are taken to be the roots of unwholesome things. And what is unwholesome? Something that is harmful for us. In meditation practice, the 5 hindrances here, the 5 hindrances, they are taken as unwholesome because they hinder our practice. Right? And these are also applied to our household lives. I think there is a different word used for us lay people. It's not karma chanda, but I think it's something to do with material possessions, material gains, always longing for more. Always there is the next thing in our lives. So the 3 poisons, greed, raga, you could say also lust, which is same as the first hindrance, which is sense desire. Sense desire in the sense that we are always longing for more. It's marked by this word called insatiability, lack. There is something lacking within us, and no matter how much we have, something is always not going to be enough. So vyapada, ill will, which goes with the second root, the of unwholesomeness, dosa. It's everything to do with dosa, vyapada, ill will, enmity, irritation, aversion, dislike, all sorts of things that we have towards ourselves, our experiences, towards other people, things in the world. Is it we tend to our minds tend to lean towards pleasurable things. When, for example, I'm sitting here, I'm feeling bored, I don't like where I am now, and my mind wants to go towards something that's pleasurable. And the opposite of that is we don't like unpleasurable things. We are aversion to unpleasurable things, to unpleasurable experiences, and then people we don't like. And what it does to us is it not only affects our social lives, interpersonal relationships, but it also affects the state of our minds. So in Buddhism, one of the things we do, or in mindfulness practices, we cultivate the mind. To cultivate the mind, we need to understand the mind, right? To understand the mind, what does it mean to understand the mind? To understand the mind means to understand whether a mind is, there is hatred in my mind, there is something unwholesome in my mind, whether there is something good in my mind. Because, for example, if there is, say, one of the hindrances is restlessness, right? If I'm feeling restless and if I have worries, I won't be able to meditate. I won't be able to sit down here. And if I am, for example, longing for something, some experiences or someone, my heart won't be like settled, right? I won't be able to concentrate. I won't be able to focus. So that's why they are called hindrances. And these first 2, so greed or lust and hatred, and then in terms of the 5 hindrances, ill will and sense desire, they are said to be very intense, and they are very extreme, kind of more dangerous than delusion, although they seem to come from a deluded place, in the sense that they are very present in us. Even now, when I'm sitting down, like I might be feeling some kind of aversion, like seeking some kind of, wait, not to say that I'm not liking this conversation, I'm liking it. But as an example, we tend to lean towards pleasurable things and dislike, and that affects a lot of our life decisions, things we do in our lives. When I sit down to do my assignment, I might have aversion to it. I hesitate and I waste my time, and a lot of sorts of things happen. So let's stop here for a little bit and let's take questions or comments.
Tajay, I think it's really helpful to see have you explain how the three poisons relate to the five hindrances. I think that is helpful to see the relationship because there is such a sort of commonality between some of those states. So thank you for pointing that out. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Michael? Yep. Is it something to do with the words like unwholesome and wholesome that we were using? Unwholesome, let's see. The Pali word is akusala, and wholesome, kusala. Basically, if you were to ask me like, Tajay, what do you want? And if I say happiness, right? Tajay, what do you want? If I say peace, then I would look at like, wait, what's preventing me from gaining happiness? And in Buddhist meditation context, they speak of different layers of happiness. Happiness that comes out of having a puppy, happiness that comes out of seeing the beautiful sunrise in the morning, and then when you meditate, happiness that comes out of when your body is settled. If you do mindfulness or breathing, your body settles down, finds stillness at a certain point. You get a lot of happy feelings, and there are like, the more you go deeper and deeper into, there are like different layers of happinesses. So if you want all those things, so, and the question that we can ask, what's preventing us, right? So there is the question, there is that answer then, oh, there could be these unwholesome qualities that's preventing me from experiencing that. Could be this beautiful mind. So that's the basic idea of unwholesomeness. And the opposite of opposite of that is wholesome qualities. For example, you could say mind that is filled with loving kindness. For example, if I'm constantly, thinking about hating other people, getting agitated, I won't be in a peaceful place. I won't be able to do a lot of things in my life, maybe. These are kind of like the qualities of the mind that we may not want to have. For example, restlessness. I feel restless a lot of the times. And worry is something to do with like the past. We have done something and it has something to regret. So that's something I have been thinking a lot these days. What regret will I have, or what regret do I have? And can I ever fix what I have done in the past? And this idea of like worry, we tend to have worry and restlessness about the future, and and doubt. Doubt here is, it's not the kind of doubt that leads to investigation, right? If I, for example, if I don't understand what doubt itself means, I would go and read, or I would ask someone else, right? So that leads to investigation. But doubt here is one that leads us to nowhere. Like in my case, I might like doubt my capacities, my abilities to do something. And I think a lot of people are struggling with doubt these days, with given the job market and all sorts of things going on.
Almost disguised hatred, maybe shame.
Yep. So it's opposite of investigation. Like
Right.
we investigate and we try to do something, we put it enough effort. So yeah. Any other, is that helpful?
Very much so. Thank you.
I think the three types of suffering there's that the Buddha taught around the First Noble Truth is the suffering of suffering, and that sort of form takes just the suffering of being in a human body that is subject to illness, old age, sickness, death, and such, as well as I think the second arrow of the suffering of change then is a second one, right? The change just constantly bringing suffering, in the way Tajay is explaining it as discontent and dissatisfaction, or a misapprehension of reality because you believe in the permanence of suffering itself, and it's so it gets sticky, right? And then there's the suffering of existence, and each of those I think relates in some way to the Trilakshana, the first three stages of the Four Seals in Mahayana Buddhism.
That's what came to my mind too, because even meditative states, right, because they are conditioned, they are also categorized under this term dukkha, which you translate as suffering. Because for example, if I sit down to meditate, I feel good for 5 minutes, and if I hold on to that as permanent and enduring, and I want it like, oh, what happened, I lost it, and that will give me that extra layer of suffering, right? So that's basically what's the saying? Not getting what one wants, right, is suffering, or separation from the pleasant is suffering. Yeah. So that's the idea. Like we want pleasant experiences, not unpleasant experiences. And the last one is the 5 aggregates of grasping. So the 5 aggregates, we have what's the first one? Physical form, right? Rupa. The second one is feelings. Sanya, which is perception, form, feelings, perception, formations, and consciousness. So they are themselves are not the problems, but when we take them for granted, for example, Tajay, right? This idea, Tajay, as I say, okay. You can't always have Tajay the way you say. Tajay will change. So something that you like, right? And then a happy feeling, right? You may feel happy for one day, and then the next day you want it to be there forever. And then when it's not there, I won't feel good because that happy feeling is not there. So holding on to these 5 aggregates as permanent, as enduring, so that's what's thought to be, what's explained as suffering. They are not necessarily suffering. So please don't go about destroying, physical form, your eye, or we need to take care of them, yeah. So that's a deeper level, and that applies to our meditative states. Like if I feel good for 5 minutes and then I don't feel good the next few days, I shouldn't torture myself, because that's the nature of the attainment that I achieve. It's not permanent, it's temporary. And in one of the Pali Suttas, I don't exactly remember what is it, but I will share it. This is from Bhikkhu Analaya's book. What is it called? Let me see. Compassion and Emptiness in Early Buddhist Meditation. The title is on top here. And this is section on loving kindness. So loving kindness. So one of the reasons we develop is also to cultivate passions, right? When we are faced with these kind of difficult situations, how long is it going to take us until we lose ourselves, right? So that to cultivate in that sense passions, that so that we can hold on to despite these difficulties. And then in this sutta, there were extreme examples that the Buddha gave, if other people physically harm you. But in reality, when we are faced with these challenges, we are not supposed to go to that extent, but it's an example like when we are faced with other minor challenges so that we are ready. So when someone is physically challenging us, maybe the best thing would be to get away from there, right? Rather than, practicing loving kindness, whereas there is the chance of us getting hurt. And so loving kindness is to develop patience in addition to dealing with all forms of hostility, enmity, and other things. And that applies to living with housemates and roommates, living with other people. There are examples of, so Bhikkhu brings up text. Let me see. Usually I'm not a good housemate, but I'm trying to be one. Like when we see something that needs to be done right in a house, we might want to tell other people, oh, why aren't you doing it? So instead, what these monks used to do in the monastery in those times is they would do, for example, where is that? I can't find it. If I come from, for example, if I come from shopping, if I go shopping, right? And if I come first, and if I see something that needs to be done, if I see the trash needs to be taken out, I should take it out. Right? Instead of, maybe we'll have a conversation later or something like that. So in ancient times, these monks, whoever comes from, in ancient times, they used to go for begging for food. That used to be the tradition, and people would give them food. So whoever comes first, that person would arrange all the things, the water pots, everything, whatever needs to be done. And so they would live harmoniously like that. It's like helping one another in that way, living harmoniously. So that's another context where loving kindness, the practice of loving kindness applies to.
I just put in the chat the talk that we did last Sunday on the 7 ways of abandoning suffering, which is from the Majjhima Nikaya. And there's a section where the Buddha teaches that it's not just about, if you're encountering difficulty or challenges, and some of you were there on Sunday, but there are other ways, other skillful means, if you will, such as enduring, avoiding, not paying attention to. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I put the link to that video. I just uploaded that a couple of days ago, so you might check that out as well.
I think that's very helpful, Chris. That's very important. Let's see. So, for example, there's a very important text that I wanted to show, and then we will go to the discourse on loving kindness, and then we'll do some little practice. Is that okay? So, what is it? This is called, in Pali, Vitakka Santana Sutta. Sorry, not this one. Anybody loves technology? Hey. So I need to practice loving kindness here. Okay, stop. Let me share again. Ta-da. Finally. Okay. So this is from Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length discourses of the Buddha. It's translated by Bhikkhu Nyanamoli and Bhikkhu Bodhi. So it's called Vitakka Santana Sutta. So Vitakka is distracting thoughts. Sutta discourse, removal of distracting thoughts. For example, like the 5 hindrances, right? If we have them, and the thoughts of ill will, if I have any thoughts of harming someone else, how do I remove such a thought? And I think this goes well with what Chris mentioned. It seems you discussed that last time. So one way is, so here is the Buddha saying, if you are pursuing a higher mind, so higher mind is a mind that's developed. Do you see it? Let me know if you don't see it, please. From time to time. So because these discourses were given to male monks, so the translators use he, you can use any pronoun you want. Let's say, from time to time, one should give attention to 5 signs. Like that, you could say there are 5 ways that you can get rid of distracting thoughts. One of them is, the first one is, if for example, a thought of hatred, enmity arises, right? So that's the first one. What I would do is I would instead focus on something good. As I say, I would say focus on loving kindness. So if there is ill will, so I would focus on the opposite sign. So that's one thing. And if I feel restless, so I would try to calm my mind, right? Focus on calmness. So that's one. And if that still doesn't work, so this is point number 2. If I still have these hindrances like desire, hatred, delusion, the 3 unwholesome roots, what I do is, 1, examines the danger in those thoughts. So if something, like for example, if I'm feeling anger towards someone else, so I may examine how that anger is affecting me. Right? I have other things to do in my life. Let's say I have to call my mom. So I don't want to call my mom with an angry mind. So that's one way to think about it. Oh, I have to finish my assignment, but I'm angry, I can't focus. So that's one way to examine like dangers of like, you see. So the first one is focusing on the opposite thought. The second one is examining those thoughts and recognizing how those thoughts, these unpleasant thoughts, leads to unwholesome things, how they cause harm to us. And if still that doesn't happen, so that's the third one, right? What with hate. So if that doesn't happen, then we should try to forget those thoughts. So if I have a thought of hatred, the thought of longing, for example, I'm trying to work, but I'm longing to, go dancing. I cannot stop my thought. So I should try to get rid of it, put in enough effort. Maybe try mindfulness of breathing, breathe in and breathe out. Maybe do some stretching, go for a walk, and then come back again and try to work on it. So yeah. So these are just some of them.